Last week, we looked at the beginning of the flood story. uh, Noah and his family and the animals following God's commandment to go into the ark, and then the coming of the flood. They're recorded in chapter 6 and in chapter 7. We come into chapter 8, and here we have chapters 8 and 9. We have the continuing story of the flood, the end of the flood, and the events which happen after the flood has taken place. So we're going to be looking at two chapters this evening, chapters 8 and chapter 9. I'd like to read, to begin with here, chapter 8, verses 1 to 12, which says, "But God remembered Noah and in the ark, and God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heaven were closed. The rain from the heavens was restrained, and the waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days, the waters had abated. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest upon the mountains of Ararat. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made, sent forth a raven, and it went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Then he sent forth a dove from him, to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put forth his hand and took her and brought her into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him any more." Verse 1 here of chapter 8 says, "But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the cattle that were with him in the ark." This statement is at the center of the flood story. This is the central point of the account here. And the statement that God remembered Noah and all of the others who were there with him in the ark marks the beginning of the reversal of the flood. God's act of judgment is now complete, and the destructive forces of the flood are about to come to an end, and the earth is to be restored. To say that God remembered Noah does not mean that God had forgotten about Noah, but rather that God is going to act on Noah's behalf. God is about to intervene to do something for Noah. So God does not remember and forget things as we do. God is all-knowing. God knows everything, so he never forgets anything, and he doesn't have to remember anything because he already knows it. So that the expression that God remembered Noah indicates that now something is about to happen. So God brought the flood to an end by making a wind blow over the earth, thus causing the waters to subside. There's a similar method in Exodus chapter 14 and verse 21 with the Israelites crossing of the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds. God blew a wind on that occasion as well, which parted the sea. So here the wind is involved and blowing across the earth to cause the waters to subside. And also by closing the fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven. So verse 2 says, "So that the rain from the heavens was restrained." The waters now began to recede from the earth, and after 150 days, the waters had abated. So it took 150 days for the waters to reach their highest point, and now after further 150 days, the waters have abated. They've decreased in height. So by the 17th day of the 7th month, then the waters had receded sufficiently for the ark to come to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Ararat is identified as the region of Armenia, which today is in eastern Turkey, although the location of the exact mountain where the ark came to rest is uncertain. There is today a mountain which is called Mount Ararat, but we're just told here that the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat without any further detail there. People have tried to look for remains of the ark in that region, but really without any success. So the water level continued to abate then until the first day of the 10th month, when the tops of the mountains could then be seen. Noah waited further 40 days before opening the window of the ark and sending out a raven, which went to and fro until the waters were dried up. And the return of the raven would indicate that it had not been able to find a place to rest. Next, then Noah sent out a dove to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground, but the dove found no place to perch, and so it returned to the ark. The waters were still covering the face of the earth. So after waiting another 7 days, Noah sent the dove out again, and this time it returned in the evening, we're told, with a freshly plucked olive leaf in its mouth, indicating now that the lower trees were now visible and were growing. The dove and the olive leaf are continue to be used today as a symbol of peace. Often we see that that being presented in that way. So 7 days later, he sent the dove out for a third time, and this time the dove did not return, indicating that it had now found its resting place. So no need to return to the ark, that the waters had gone down sufficiently where the dove would be able to perch or nest in the trees which were now growing and now visible. Reading on here then, verses 13 to 19, we have the leaving of the ark. In the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried from off the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. In the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dry. Then God said to Noah, "Go forth from the ark, you and your wife and your sons wives with you. Bring forth with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may breed abundantly on the earth and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth." So Noah went forth, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him, and every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that moves upon the earth went forth by families out of the ark. So it was not until the first day of the first month of the 601st year of Noah's life that Noah removed the cover of the ark, and he saw that the earth was now dry. But it was not until the 27th day of the second month that the ground was sufficiently dry for God then to command Noah to leave the ark, taking with him his wife, his sons and their wives, and all of the living creatures that had been on the ark with him. So Noah did not leave the ark when he thought the time was right, but he waited for God's instructions, waited for the time for God to tell him to leave. God had commanded Noah to enter the ark at a certain point in time, and now he commanded Noah to leave the ark at a certain point in time. And God said that the living creatures were to breed abundantly on the earth, and to be fruitful and to multiply upon the earth. And this was exactly the same thing as was said of the creatures in the initial creation, when God created the world and created the living creatures in chapter 1 and verse 22. But God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." So that's referring to the birds and the fishes there. And then in verse 28 as well, of chapter 1, speaking there of God blessing the man and the woman, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." So things are being reenacted as they had been at the beginning of creation here, when the animals leave the ark, and they are to once again populate the earth. Noah had entered the ark on the 7th day of the second month in the 600th year of his life. So we're told in chapter 7, verse 11. And now he left the ark just over 1 year later, on the 27th day of the second month of the 601st year of his life. Noah's obedience is again demonstrated here as he and his family leave the ark as God had directed them. So they all come out of the ark. And then in chapter 8, verses 20 to 22, we read that the first thing that Noah does when on leaving the ark is to build an altar. Verse 20 says, Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing odour, the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again destroy every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. So the first thing that Noah did on leaving the ark was to build an altar to the Lord and to make a burnt offering of the clean animals and the birds that he had taken into the ark. This is the first time that the word altar is used in the Bible. The Hebrew word for altar is mizbeach. Our word altar comes from Latin word altus, and that word means high or elevated. It's often the case that places of worship were high places, or altars were in a high, signified a high place. So Noah builds this altar and makes this offering, and this was an offering of praise to God for the deliverance that God had provided. The offering was pleasing to the Lord, we're told. He smelled the pleasing odour. Same type of language is used by the Apostle Paul, referring to Christ's sacrifice in Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 2. Ephesians chapter 5 verse 2, Paul says, And walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. So the offering that Noah made was a pleasing odour, a fragrant odour to the Lord, which pleased the Lord. And likewise the offering of Christ, the Christ offering himself, it was a fragrant offering and a sacrifice to God, a pleasing sacrifice. So Noah's pleasing action then prompted the Lord to say in his heart that he would never again curse the ground because of man, nor would he ever again destroy every living creature. And from verse 21, we see that the Lord understands that the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. So human nature is not changed by the flood. The flood would not prevent further wickedness of mankind. But God understands man's nature and our inclination to do that which is evil. But in his mercy and in his forbearance, he has decided that he will not destroy the earth again by means of a flood. Future judgments that God brought would be selective rather than universal in scope, as this one was. And the Lord promises that whilst the earth remains, or all the days of the earth, the seasons shall also remain. So life on earth will continue uninterrupted from season to season. So there will be a predictable cycle of the seasons. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. So there's this predictable cycle of events to take place. The flood then demonstrates both the justice and the long suffering of God, or the goodness and the severity of God. Peter makes reference to the flood in his second letter in 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 to 7, where he uses it as a reminder that there is another judgment that is to come. He speaks here of those who scoff when they hear of the Lord's return or the Lord's judgment. In 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 3, Peter writes, "First of all, you must understand this, that scoffers will come in the last days with scoffing, following their own passion and saying, 'Where is this of his coming? For ever since the fathers fell asleep, all things have continued as they were from the beginning of creation.'" So people are saying, well, nothing has changed. Everything just carries on as it always have. But then Peter says they deliberately ignore this fact that by the word of God, heavens existed long ago, and an earth formed out of water and by means of water, through which the world that then existed was deluged with water and perished. By the same word, the heavens and the earth that now exist have been stored up for fire, being kept until the day of judgment and destruction of ungodly men. So in a sense, this universal flood that God brought upon the earth at that time foreshadows the final judgment, the judgment that is still yet to come for all of us. Going on then into chapter 9, we see what happens after the flood here in this new beginning. Chapter 9 verses 1 to 7 says, "And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said to them, Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every bird of the air, upon everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you, and as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. Only you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. For your lifeblood I will surely require a reckoning. Of every beast I will require it, and of every man. Of every man's brother I will require the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his own image. And you, be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly on the earth, and multiply in it." So after the flood then came a new beginning, a recreation of the earth out of the chaos that had been caused by the flood. And God's instructions to Noah and his sons here are essentially the same as the instructions that God gave to Adam and Eve, that Noah and his sons are blessed by God, and they are commanded to be fruitful, to multiply, and to fill the earth. So after the death of mankind in the flood, the earth would now need to be repopulated once again, and Noah and his family would be the ones through whom that would be accomplished. So Noah and his sons are also given dominion here over the animals, a relationship that would be marked by their fear and dread of Noah. And perhaps that might suggest a change in the relationship between people and animals. Perhaps following the flood, there is now more of a fear amongst animals, a fear of mankind amongst the animals, where perhaps previously the animals had been more approachable or more or tamer than after the flood. So perhaps there's a suggestion there of some sort of change of relationship there. And God also makes provision for food for Noah and his family. Earlier, before the flood, God had given mankind the plants for food, back in chapter 1, verse 29, but now God gives them every moving thing that lives for food. So it would seem from this that it was after the flood that man is permitted to eat meat, to eat the animals. However, with the permission to eat meat came a prohibition on the eating of blood. They are not permitted to eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. So the blood is seen then as a symbol of life and as the means of atonement, that through sacrifice, when blood is shed, that is for the atonement of sins. We see this prohibition in the law of Moses in Leviticus chapter 3, verse 17. Leviticus chapter 3, verse 17, speaking of some of the sacrifices here, it shall be a perpetual statute throughout your generations in all your dwelling places that you eat neither fat nor blood. And then in chapter 7, verse 26 of Leviticus, Again, moreover, you shall eat no blood whatever, whether of fowl or of animal, in any of your dwellings. Whoever eats any blood, that person shall be cut off from his people. And then in Leviticus chapter 17, from verse 10, if any man of the house of Israel or of the strangers that sojourn among them eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood, and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood. So here's the reason why they're not permitted to eat the blood. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it for you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls. So the blood is to bring about atonement or forgiveness. For it is the blood that makes atonement by reason of the life. Therefore I have said to the people of Israel, no person among you shall eat blood, neither shall any stranger who sojourns among you eat blood. So this was the prohibition that God placed upon the eating of blood. And it goes back here to this time with Noah, where that is introduced. God also warns Noah and his family here that the shedding of human blood or animal blood will require a reckoning, that whoever sheds the blood of another person will themselves have to face the death penalty, because God made man in his own image. So the fact that mankind is made in the image of God shows the sacredness of human life. And then the passage concludes with a further exhortation for Noah and his sons to be fruitful and to multiply in order to fill the earth. Chapter 9 continues to verses 8 to 17. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, behold, I establish my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the cattle, and every beast of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you, and every living creature that is with you, for all future generations. I set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth, and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will look upon it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. So having given Noah then these instructions, God now establishes a covenant with Noah and with his sons. It's God who takes the initiative in establishing this covenant. It's God's idea, and it's unusual in that there are no conditions attached to this covenant. This is a one-sided covenant. Usually a covenant involves two sides involved in the covenant, but God is taking the initiative and making this unilateral covenant. It's a covenant which demonstrates God's grace through the promises that he makes to Noah. And the covenant is made with Noah and his descendants and with every living creature, the birds, the cattle, and the beasts of the earth, everything that came out of the ark. The purpose of the covenant was to assure Noah that all flesh and the earth would never again be destroyed by a flood of water. So God is promising not to bring another judgment of this type, of this kind, upon the earth. And the sign of this covenant was to be the rainbow. So the rainbow became a visible sign of this spiritual promise. A rainbow is natural, and it is being given a new significance here, that it is the sign of this covenant. A rainbow is caused by the sun's rays falling on raindrops, the reflection and refraction of the light of the sun going through the drops of rain produces. So it's a natural occurrence, and there's no for us to believe that rainbows didn't exist before its time. Rather, God is using the rainbow, that naturally occurring thing, and attaching a significance to it. So the rainbow would then be not only a sign of the covenant for mankind, but also a reminder to God of that covenant. And so the rainbow is an indication of the faithfulness of God, that God keeps his promises despite the failures of mankind. And the duration of this covenant is said to be everlasting. God's keeping of this covenant then is not dependent upon the obedience of man. So in this sense, it is an unconditional covenant. The guarantee of the covenant is the word of God, that God is saying this, God is making this covenant. And Noah here accepts by faith what God is saying. In verses 18 and 19, these verses provide a link between what has just been said and then what is about to be recorded from verse 20. And we're reminded in verses 18 and 19 of the names of the sons of Noah. The sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was peopled. We're also introduced here to Canaan, the son of Ham, and he's going to feature in the next section as well. And so it was from these three sons of Noah that the earth was populated, we're told. We come now into chapter 9, verses 20 to 29, and unusual little incident that's recorded here, really the only incident from the life of Noah that is recorded after the flood. It says here from verse 20 to the end of the chapter now, Noah was the first tiller of the soil. He planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and became drunk, and lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it upon both their shoulders, and walked backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, Cursed be Canaan, a slave of slaves shall he be to his brothers. He also said, Blessed by the Lord my God be Shem, and let Canaan be his slave. God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his slave. After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. We have the account here of Noah's drunkenness and its consequences. The Revised Standard Version is a little bit misleading in its translation in verse 20, where it says that Noah was the first tiller of the soil. He planted a vineyard. Of course, Noah wasn't the first tiller of the soil. Adam was the first tiller of the soil. The New International Version translates that as Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. So that probably captures the meaning better than the Revised Standard Version there. We don't know how much time has elapsed here since the end of the flood, when they all came out of the ark, and this particular incident. Nothing is said about that time at the time which this took place. But for Noah, life after the flood involved him in being a tiller of the soil and making a vineyard, that we're told here. He planted this vineyard. Noah then became drunk by drinking the wine that he had produced, and he lay naked in his tent. This is the first recorded instance of a case of drunkenness, but it's simply recorded here. No comment is made about it. So we know from other references in the scriptures that drunkenness is regarded as a sin, but no comment is made at this particular point. So was it inadvertent? Did Noah not understand the process of fermentation? Is this something that happened inadvertently by chance that this came about? We don't really know. But having become drunk, then Noah lay uncovered in his tent, and his son Ham saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers who were outside. Again, there's no further details are added to this. Various speculations have been made about what Ham might have done when he saw the nakedness of his father, but here we're simply told that he saw that his father was naked. Seeing the nakedness of his father would be something, though, that would bring shame upon Noah if he was conscious of that. We know after Adam and Eve had sinned, they were aware of their nakedness and they covered themselves. So nakedness came to be regarded as a shameful condition. Noah was the head of the family, the patriarch, and should have been held in honor and respect. So Ham sees this, he goes and tells his two brothers, but the actions of Shem and Japheth are perhaps in contrast to Ham's. We wonder, well, why did Ham have to go and tell them? Why did he say anything about it? Shem and Ham take action in order to cover their father's shame, his nakedness. So laying a garment on their shoulders, they then walked backwards and they covered up Noah. So their faces were turned away from him so that they did not see the nakedness of Noah. When Noah awoke from his drunken state, he knew what his youngest son had done, we're told, but we're not told how he knew this. And in response to what has happened, Noah then pronounces a curse upon Ham's son, Canaan, in verse 25. And these here are the only words of Noah that are actually recorded in the Bible. So we may wonder, well, why is Canaan cursed and not Ham? It was Ham who had seen the nakedness of Noah and had told his brothers. So was Canaan involved as well? We don't really know. Or was it that Ham's descendants through Canaan would be the ones who would suffer the consequences of this? But Noah's curse of Canaan then makes him a slave of slaves to his brothers, we're told. But as well as cursing Canaan, Noah also pronounces a blessing upon Shem in verse 26, that Shem is to be blessed by the Lord and Canaan shall be his slave. And it would be through the line of Shem that Abraham would come, and then Israel, and ultimately Christ himself would come from the line of Shem. So there is the blessing there in that line. Noah also has a word for his other son, Japheth, in verse 27. Japheth is to be enlarged, and he is to dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan is to be his slave too. Not clear exactly what it means for him to dwell in the tents of Shem. It may suggest that Japheth will be prosperous, that he would have many descendants who would occupy the territories of Shem's descendants as well. But the words of Noah here are prophetic, really, and they are fulfilled in the subsequent history of the Canaanites, who were the inhabitants of the land that God promised to give to Abraham and to his descendants. So the curse is upon the Canaanites rather than the individuals who are mentioned here. The Canaanites lost possession of the land when the Israelites conquered it and took possession of it, and they themselves then became subject to the Israelites. The story of Noah then concludes here with a note that Noah lived for 350 years after the flood, so a total of 950 years, 600 years before the flood, 350 after the flood, and then he died. Nothing else is recorded of any other events that took place in the long life of Noah other than what we have here. So that brings us to the end of the story there. There's a few questions that we might want to think about or reflect upon. What does it mean that God remembered Noah? Back there in chapter 8 and verse 1, we're told that God remembered Noah. What was involved in that? Why does God make covenants with people? We see this covenant that God made with Noah and the descendants of Noah, but there's lots of other covenants that are mentioned in the Bible as well. So what's that all about? Why does God make a covenant with people? And how do you view this action of Noah here in getting drunk and the rest of this incident? What's going on there? And then what does the flood story tell us about sin and its consequences? What can we learn about the character of God and the judgment of God? And how does that prepare us for the future, for our own judgment that we will have to face? So a few things there to think about, but we'll stop there for this evening.